Lieutenant, I'm just going to follow up on two areas that were kind of left before we broke. Have you now had a chance to retrieve the transparencies that you prepared of the shoes that you bought last week?
Yes.
Okay. And am I correct that that was a size 12 pair and a size 11 pair?
Correct.
Okay. And those were Nike Futures, right?
They were Air Jordan Nike Futures, correct.
Air Jordan Nike Futures, okay. And it's your understanding that the outsole pattern for the Air Jordan 11 Nike Future is the same as the outsole? Okay, and they're labeled by size?
Yes, sir.
One's labeled 12, one's labeled 11?
Yes, sir.
I've offered these as an extra. Let me just display them quickly. 383. This is that's a size 12.
Correct.
And 384. That's a size 11.
That is correct.
Now, you recall earlier, sir, I asked you about this exhibit, 99V, right?
Yes, Counsel.
And I asked you about whether you could see a footwear impression in the upper left portion of that photograph, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you told me that you were really unable to tell whether or not there was one there.
That's correct.
Okay. So what I'm going to show you now, sir, I'm going to first just hand it to you before I put it in this. Well, I represent to you, this is an enlargement of the upper left-hand portion of that same exhibit, 99V. I'd ask that it be,
I don't have any objection.
Can we mark this next exhibit?
So it's pretty small right now, but why don't you just look at it before I put it on the screen and tell us if you can recognize or see what appears to be a footwear impression in that photograph.
I see something that appears to be some type of pattern in the left side. I really can't say from this photo. If you could enlarge it for me, it would be helpful.
Okay, let's do that then. So this is now 385, a lot bigger. Shrinking, help me again. Okay. Can you now see?
I see the spot you're referring to, Counsel,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, and does that appear to you to be a footwear impression, sir?
From this photograph, I am not sure.
Okay.
I see a
And
series of lines.
okay, you see a series of lines, right?
Yes, Counsel.
Okay. And we're kind of right in the middle of the photograph now, right? You see a series of lines, vertical lines, right where that pencil is?
I do.
Okay. And based on your experience and looking at a lot of footwear impressions, does that look like a footwear impression, sir?
No.
Okay. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sir, yesterday you were asked by Mr. Sultan whether you had ever talked to him. Is that right?
Yes.
Has he ever called you to talk to you?
No.
Made any contact with you? Mr. Sultan, has he made any contact with you?
No.
But do you recall at some point being contacted by an agent of Mr. Sultan, a man by the name of James Streeter?
Yes.
And then, do you know James Streeter?
I do.
Okay, and who is James Streeter?
James Streeter owns a company called Northeast Forensics out of Groton, Connecticut.
Okay. And as a result of being contacted by, did Mr. Streeter indicate he was contacting you at the request of Mr. Sultan?
Yes.
Okay. And when he contacted you, did you talk to him?
Certainly.
Did you provide him all the information that you provided to this jury in terms of anything that he wanted, photos or discovery?
Yes.
So have you ever tried to keep anything, sharing either your opinions or information from Mr. Sultan?
Absolutely not.
And everything, that transparency that you just went out to get at the car, the size 12 and 11, I believe it's now 384, 385, provided those as well. This is not the first time that those have appeared, right?
That's correct. Those were provided.
Okay. Now, with regard to your initial examination of what we're referring to as placard number 2, that, at the time, I think you've already indicated, there was a certain silhouette pattern to that, is that right?
That is correct.
And when you saw it back, when you first saw it, you indicated you didn't recognize what kind of shoe that was from, is that true?
That would be correct.
And this database that Mr. Sultan referenced, there are essentially millions, maybe billions of shoes in the world, is that true?
Yes.
And so this idea of sitting down and being able to distinguish certain shoes over others, that's an enormous task, just on starting with the silhouette of a shoe, is that right?
That would be correct.
Okay. Now, I think you'd indicated in question by Mr. Sultan, there were certain things when he asked, you said, well, that was the information I had in front of me, but there was certain information you didn't have in front of you when you first did your analysis, is that right?
Yes.
And what was that? What was the most important thing you didn't have in front of you?
A known shoe.
Okay. Now, he asked you about the known shoe, and I think one of the last questions he asked just before the break, whether you can tell us whether this shoe made it, and again, we're not talking about this shoe, but a shoe of Aaron Hernandez made that impression. You can't tell us that, is that right?
No.
Okay. But can you tell us, to a reasonable degree of certainty, that this style of shoe was consistent in manufacture and design and physical size?
Yes.
Okay. And would you agree with me, the sole pattern of this shoe is unique. It's different than a lot of shoes that you see.
That's correct. I hadn't seen that type of sole before, quite frankly. It's something that didn't jump out at me.
Okay. If I could, Your Honor, use the overhead.
Me.
69H. You'd agree with me that is consistent with, again, just focusing on the silhouette of this footprint. Is that right?
Yes.
And physical size. That physical size, you made a transparency of that shoe I just showed you. Is that right?
That is correct.
And you then also made a one-to-one photograph of the of what we're referring to as placard number 2, and I'm just holding up Exhibit 376, right?
I did.
And you were able to then overlay, if I could again, you want to read the overlay? You then overlaid that and were able to make determinations that that shoe was consistent in a number of areas. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And just the areas that you were able, how many of those areas was it consistent with?
The two major areas that I now saw, can I use the...
Yes, and let me just to orient it. Go ahead, sir.
The two main areas that I now saw...
Just turn it off there.
Thank you. Were the large void on this side, a smaller void on this side, a very small void here, and if it could be slid up just a little, Council. There is a small void here, and can't get down to it, but a small void here. In addition to the four herringbone style wave lines that were in the midsole of the shoe. But what I did not understand about this impression prior to having the known shoe was the importance of this large void and the void up on this side here. And then once I saw those voids and were able to line up the four wavy lines in the midsole, there was a small spot here and then the two small spots down here. So in total 2, 6, 7, 8, 9 areas that I saw class characteristics that were consistent with the Retro 11 Air Jordan design.
Now, Mr. Sultan asked you about the transparency of the victim, Golden Ward, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And you also compared that to 376, is that right?
I did.
Is that consistent?
No, it isn't. Even though it has a wavy herringbone lines, I wouldn't call it wavy, but it is more of a true herringbone, which is a V or an inverted V caused by parallel lines. If you were to line up the lines on the heel, the bottom of the shoe, and actually you'd have to bring it up high to catch the fourth line. Okay, so if you try to get the highest herringbone or waved line on this, first of all, it doesn't match up because it doesn't follow that same course that the Air Jordan does. But no longer is the bottom of the shoe where it should be in the heel cup, which is down here. In addition, this void we see with the Air Jordan is over here, and it's a curved line. Instead, we have a straight line that is in that instep of the shoe, and there's no area on this shoe that's receptive to that void area that would be underneath here. This is a straight curvature that follows right down. Unlike the Air Jordan that does have that void, actually both on this side, and the Air Jordan has a void up on this side as well.
So as a result of that, were you able to exclude Golden Ward shoes?
I was able to exclude Odin Lloyd shoes, yes.
And with regard to, he asked you some questions about this Mr. Sultan, about, oh, you weren't able to do anything with these shoes. That's not true, is that right? In terms of your, strike that, your initial footwear analysis of the footwear impression, you were able to exclude shoes from him.
That's correct. I had that wave herringbone design, the 4 series of lines in the midsole of the shoe. Again, I wasn't sure what that large right area that was actually a void was, but I did have that area of wave herringbone. So anything that had that kind of, or did not have that kind of pattern, especially in the midsole, I was able to exclude.
And that included the winterized boots?
Yes.
And that also included the grade of recreation had herringbone, is that right?
It did. A very tight herringbone pattern through most of the top and most of the bottom shoe.
You could exclude this herringbone pattern from footwear impression placard 2.
Right, that herringbone could not make that wave lines.
So it wasn't necessarily limited to whether there was the presence of herringbone or not. It really depended upon what did the bottom of the shoe look like.
Correct.
Now, when Mr. Sultan asked you questions, could I approach you on here? About a lot of the question in your cross-examination, he had in front of you 237B. Do you recognize that?
I sure do.
Okay. Would you agree with me that's the blurriest photo of the ones that have been offered here and that you've examined?
Yes.
Okay. And so would you say this fairly and accurately depicts in the best way possible the footwear impression that you were using to make your opinions?
No, and the problem is, it's actually, it is in focus, but the problem is the light situation. And it doesn't allow you to see the four wavy lines correctly. So you've lost that detail in the midsole of the shoe. It still represents the voids, but it's very difficult to see those wavy lines.
Okay, would you agree with me that was actually 237F that you use in your blow-up, which is marked as 376. I'm just going to show you. So that's 237B. This is 237F. Is that clear?
Yes.
Now, just look at, when you talked about the light, where the light was applied. If I just asked you to focus on the directionality of the shadows from those blades of grass.
Yes, the light is coming from, would be the toe of the shoe or the front of the shoe, and it's being cast towards the rear of the shoe. And it's illuminating the entire impression, so it's a much easier photograph to do a comparison off of.
Okay, you'd agree you can see that herringbone pattern that you've described?
Yes, with that wave at the finish, you can especially see it in the lowest of the wavy herringbone lines. You can see the recurve as it's starting to work towards the void or the instep of the shoe.
Okay, and I'm just going to go back to 237B, photograph that Mr. Sultan was using. Can you see that as clear, that herringbone pattern is clear?
No, in fact, the light on this one probably is almost directly over it, which is at, in this case, it flashed onto the detail and pretty much obscured it. So you can see the faint lines there, but certainly not as clear as the last photo you showed me.
Okay. With regard to, I'm just putting out the blow-up, 376, would you agree that's consistent with, just in terms of the shadow lines and other features in the photograph, the shadow from those blades of grass with 237F?
Yes.
So that's the blow-up, is that true?
The one on the bottom is the natural size photo, yes.
There are a number of other photographs equally clear, A through K, is that right?
Yes, they all are, again, casting the light in different directions, is picking up different detail, but yeah, that there are some pretty good photographs in there.
Now, Mr. Sultan asked you about, do you work with, are you part of the prosecution team? You remember that question?
Yes, sir.
Excuse me. And your answer was?
I do not.
Okay. Who do you work for?
I'm employed by the Massachusetts State Police, and
I'm sorry?
And I work in the Forensic Service Group in the Crime Laboratory.
And so when you're tasked with analyzing evidence, what is your duty?
My duty is to objectively examine evidence and render results.
Does it make a bit of difference if I ask you to look at something, or Trooper Benson asks you to look at something? Does that affect your opinion in any way?
It does not.
Okay. Is it unusual in the course of a case, as new things are learned or items are found, for either a prosecutor working on the case or the investigating officer to ask you to go back and look at certain items?
I would say it's not unusual, it's actually usual, it's part of the process.
Have you ever been involved in a case where you had all the information in the first, day or two?
If I have, it's a huge exception. It's not possible.
But there was a photograph that Mr. Sultan had asked you about. It's Exhibit 364, if I could use it again. And I think you indicated at some point you were at the residence of the defendant. Is that right?
Yes, on June 18th.
And your purpose on that date, there was certain items that were noted. Is that true?
Yes.
Is this one of them?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall where these items were?
That was in the downstairs finished basement portion of the home. I'm taking the photograph. I believe I'm actually in a bathroom taking a picture into an adjoining bedroom that's located in this area.
Okay. And these were not positioned for the purpose of taking a photo, is that right?
No.
Okay, so this is just as they existed on that date?
They were captured in an overall photo that I took.
Now, did you understand, one of the things about your involvement in the case and your analysis, do you have to rely on certain information to understand, what to test or what not to look at?
Yes.
Okay. And did you understand at some point there were certain pairs of shoes from a home surveillance video that were observed on the defendant, on Ernest Wallace and Carlos Ortiz?
I did learn that information.
And then further investigation came back to this photograph?
Correct.
Okay. So as a result of that, did you then look at this photograph and try and make a determination of the types of shoes that were in this photograph?
I did have the occasion to look at it, yes.
Okay. And is it fair to say the original work that was done to attempt to identify was done by Trooper Benson?
That's accurate.
Objection sustained.
Okay, well, Mr. Sultan had asked you about, well, Trooper Benson came to you and gave you information. Let's look at certain things. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And was he just pulling this stuff out of the air?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you understand there was new information that he had learned that he wanted you to look at?
Yes.
Did that include going back to this photograph?
Yes.
Okay. As well as there was other video that showed certain footwear?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And so as a result of that, in terms of your focus, Mr. Sultan asked you about this idea of why is Benson focused on this item and then bringing it to your attention. Why are you focused now on the Nike Retro 11?
Because of the information that had been provided to me.
Okay. And as a result of that, this photograph, do you go and identify the shoes contained here?
Personally, me, no.
Okay. Do you make efforts to get them identified?
Yes.
How do you do that?
I called a gentleman from the Nike Corporation, Herb Hedges, who had worked in the past. He's a law enforcement liaison for the company, and I asked him to assist me.
Okay. And was he able to do that?
He was.
Did he provide you information about the types of shoes here?
He did.
Did you then rely on that when shoes were then gathered, the boots, the Retro 11s, and then Creative Recreation?
Yes.
Did he actually, in fact, provide some information about the red shoes?
He did.
Okay. And then were efforts made to contact the manufacturer of these shoes at Creative Recreation?
There was.
So again, the information that you are relying on receiving, that's solely for the purpose of then acquiring certain shoes to conduct further testing.
Yes.
Did you have it in your mind what your conclusion was going to be before you actually did your examination?
No.
So these shoes here, in that, from your picture, the downstairs bedroom, the ones on the right, what kind of shoes are those?
They're Creative Recreation's low Cesario.
Was there a color?
Red.
Is there also a red herringbone? You know them as that?
Yes, it's referred to as a red herringbone.
These shoes here, sir,
Those are the Nike Air Jordan Retro 11s.
and these here.
Those are the Air Jordan Spizike hiking boots.
And so as a result of your examination, were you able to exclude, again, going back to placard 2, the red creative recreation?
Yes, once I had the shoes and did my examination, I did exclude the creative recreation shoes.
And there was certain questions Mr. Sultan asked you about class characteristics, is that right?
Yes.
Did they share class characteristics?
The creative recs, no.
Okay. What about the boots?
No.
Okay. And so then you did further analysis with regard to the Retro 11.
Yes,
Did they share class characteristics?
we did.
Silhouette profile, was that similar?
Yes,
And then you've pointed out all those areas of agreement, is that right?
that is correct.
Okay. Now, he also asked you some questions about the size, why being fixed on this idea of size 13, is that right?
Object to the form of the question.
Sustained.
Okay. Were you asked about the size, sir? About,
Oh, yes, during
okay.
my
And you went
examination.
out and it was acquired, that pair there was a size 13.
Yes,
Is there a reason for that?
yes.
Okay. Just going to put it, if I could, not on the other. Exhibit number 230E. You recognize what's depicted in this photograph, sir?
Yes, that's a closet that's located adjacent to the master bedroom at 22 Ronald Meyer Drive.
Okay, and that is the home of the defendant?
Yes,
You've been there?
yes.
And those boxes, what kind of boxes are those, sir?
Those are Nike boxes.
Okay. And do you see what size are on these? First of all, how many boxes up there that you can see a size on?
In the photograph, I'm seeing 3,
Okay. What size?
size 13.
On all 3?
Yes, sir.
And what about, do you see a logo that you recognize?
It's the Michael Jordan logo.
Is that also known as the Jumpman?
Yes, it is.
So was there a reason that you then went out and got a size 13 Nike Jordan Retro 11?
Yes.
And when you made that comparison, did you find it similar or dissimilar in physical size?
Similar.
And did you and I have a conversation about also checking to see if size 12 or 11 could have been capable of making that placard 2 footwear impression?
Yes.
Do you find anything inappropriate about that?
No.
Okay. And what did you find when these 2 transparencies that you made for an 11 or a 12?
Although the shared manufacturing design of the Air Jordan outsole, both were eliminated due to size.
Okay. So an 11 or 12 didn't make that size, is that right?
That's my opinion.
Now, you were also asked questions by Mr. Sultan about why you thought certain areas were important or not important in terms of your focus at the crime scene, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. To begin with, when you got there, were certain areas already covered?
Yes.
And rain was already underway?
Yes.
So the determination of what areas were covered or were not covered, did you have any role in that?
No.
So in some ways, was that then somebody else made that determination prior to your arrival?
Yes.
So when these items now that have already been covered, I think you described 4 of them, the body, placard 1, which is the big tarp, and then the 2 smaller, 2 and 3.
Correct.
Did you make examinations there?
I did.
Okay. The other areas were then being, there was significant rain and water?
Yes, unfortunately.
Okay. Now, do you rely, when you come to a scene, on information provided by first responders, civilian witnesses, in making judgments about what is potentially going to be the focus of your work, or not?
Yes, it's part of that, preparation to understand what the scene is like.
Under tarp number 1, you saw there was tire tracks as well as some footprints.
Yes.
Could you tell, based on your own observations of that tire track, which came first in some of those areas?
Yes.
Okay. And how were you able to do that?
You're able to do that. In this case, the tire track came first because when the footwear impressions impacted it, the characteristics of the tire are now lost, and the characteristics of the footwear is, you can observe that. And then on the other sides of the footwear, you again can see the characteristics of the tire track.
And with regard to, obviously, information was being provided to you, which would be in the normal course of understanding. Was anybody standing in these areas? Is that right?
That was my understanding, yes.
Okay, so, and you had learned that certain people, after the body was discovered, were standing in that area?
Yes.
Okay. Did you still do an analysis of those footprints?
I did.
Okay. And those are the ones we've covered?
Yes.
And with regard to the other 2, did you also have similar conversations about whether people were standing around in those areas?
Yes.
Okay. And to the extent that Mr. Sultan had asked you about, well, let me just back up a second. That tarp area was how far from the body?
The large top?
Yes, sir.
I'd say 30 to 50 feet. Again, the size of the top is, probably 20 plus feet.
Okay.
So some of it was closer than that, some of it was further away.
Okay. And where you found where placard 2 was, you actually took a measurement to one of the tire tracks.
I did.
And what was that measurement?
Oh, placard 2?
I beg your pardon, to the tire track.
Oh, yes. From the tire track to the body, I made a measurement.
Yes, sir.
And that measurement was 13 feet 6 to the victim's head, assuming he was 6 feet tall. His feet would be about 7 feet 6 from that tire track.
Okay. And did you also use information provided to you in making determinations of the area you were interested in where the shell casings were found?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure. Did you have some understanding about where shell casings were recovered in relation to the body?
Yes, generally, yeah.
Okay. And obviously, the location of certain items, such as shell casings, would either suggest that either a shell casing had been deposited, carried and deposited there, or maybe that a gun had been fired in short proximity to those areas.
It could be either one, yes, that's true.
You were present when you recovered 2 projectiles from underneath the body, the location of where the body was.
I object, Your Honor. I didn't discuss this on cross-examination at all.
If I could just ask a further question. Sir, Mr. Sultan asked you about either the significance, the importance of where you're looking for footprints versus areas that you might not be looking for. Was it significant to you that you recovered 2 projectiles in the ground underneath that same area where you saw the body of Odin Lloyd a couple days before?
Yes.
Okay. Did that indicate to you where the shooter had to have been able to recover the projectiles in the ground?
The objection is sustained.
Do other evidence factor into your determination of where you're interested in with regard to footwear impressions?
Yes.
And obviously the material, the type of ground or material, is that important to you?
Yes.
And how would you describe the area around the body?
In the immediate area around the body, it was very hard and compacted. It appeared machinery had been driven over it. It just was very close to almost a pavement type material, heavily stoned. It was just a very hard, compact material.
In that photograph Mr. Sultan had showed you with those lines,
Yes.
can you exclude that as a tire or some type of machinery having caused that?
I'm really not sure what made that.
But the absence of footprints around the body of Odom Loy, were you surprised by that based on the terrain there?
No.
Objection. Form of the question.
The
Assume
objection
the
is
fact, not
sustained
evidence.
and remind you not to ask leading questions. That's the sort of tricky.
And sir, with regard to any of those, the footwear impressions under the tarp number 1, that you had made comparisons, it was to, just going back to Mr. Sultan's question, you never, or it was not your intention to suggest that it was, you individualized it to either Grimm or Zimmer's shoe?
Certainly not.
Okay. In fact, I think you indicated at some point during the cross-examination that you wouldn't be able to do on size. Manufacturing design you could, but not as to actual size.
No, not without a scale, no.
Okay. And with regard to the number of responders, I think you indicated, questioning by Mr. Sultan, there were 33 people that had come to that scene, is that right?
That was on the list, the log that's right there.
And how many people came before you?
This list isn't in chronological order. The only one I see on 1, 2, 3, I only see 4. I take it back. They have 2 times. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
And you arrived at 6:53?
Correct.
Okay. And when you arrived, the condition of these areas, tarped or untarped?
They were covered.
So clearly, you couldn't have made any of the impressions.
I could not.
Okay. And those other people, Lombard, he came, I think you said, at 8:29?
7:43.
I beg your pardon. Shervin, 8:29?
Actually, it shows 7:50 p.m.
Okay, so Mr. Sultan had asked about Lombard arriving at 8:20, and you're saying, again, that's inaccurate.
I see 2 different times here. Oh, it's entered time and cleared time. So Trooper Shervin, it shows entering at 19:50 or 7:50 p.m.
7:50. So if the suggestion was made he arrived at 8:29, would that be inaccurate?
I object.
Objection is
Your Honor.
sustained.
Okay.
The witness recited the times, the questions had no times in them.
Alana Frederick, 9:29.
That's a vague question. 929 for what, please?
Objection sustained.
Arrived, what time did Alana Frederick arrive?
According to this log, Alana Frederick arrived at 8:42 p.m. and departed at 9:24 p.m.
Okay, so Alana Frederick, at the arrival time, based on your own observation, were the tarps down prior to her arrival?
They were down, yes, they were already down.
Okay, and Shervin, were they down prior to his arrival?
Yes,
Okay, and Lombard, were they down prior to his arrival?
yes,
And all those other people that arrived after 6:53 because you observed them when you arrived?
correct.
I can have one moment, Your Honor, please. Thank you, sir, I have nothing further.
I have a one-to-one, please. Sir, you were just asked some questions about what happened when you got to the scene, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And am I correct that when you got to the scene on June 17th, you had no idea what had transpired prior to the shooting of Odin Lloyd, did you?
No.
You had no idea where in that area Mr. Lloyd had been before he was shot, do you?
No.
You had no idea where in that area his assailant had been walking or running before the shooting occurred, did you?
No.
And would you agree with me that whatever impressions, footwear impressions at the scene that were eradicated by weather or by people walking around, those impressions are gone forever?
If they were, yes, they are.
Okay. And you told us about some areas that were tarped, right?
Yes.
Okay. But most of the area wasn't tarped, was it?
Can you define most of the area?
Well, you described it yesterday, I think, as a, well, I'll show you a photograph. Find one. That's an aerial photograph. Is that the area that you responded to on the evening of June 17, 2013?
Yes.
Okay. And where I'm pointing here, is that roughly the area where Mr. Lloyd's body was found?
That would be correct.
Okay. And so, am I correct? So when I'm referring to area, I'm referring to this general area, say 100 yards on all sides from, well, make it even smaller. Say 20 feet on all sides from where Mr. Lloyd's body was found. That area wasn't all under a tarp, was it, sir?
Not a 20 square foot area, no. No, sir.
There was a tarp covering Mr. Lloyd's body, right?
Yes.
And there was a tarp covering a tire track, right?
Tire tracks, yes.
And there was a tarp covering 2 footwear impressions, right?
Yes.
And other than that, not counting the tent that was erected for the police, there weren't any tarps, right?
No, that's the amount of tops that were there,
Okay.
yes.
So most of the area wasn't covered by a tarp, was it?
No.
All right. And you weren't keeping track of who was walking around and where they were walking during the time that you were there, were you?
Once I arrived on the scene, shortly after I had a briefing, all of the police officers moved out of the scene at
Okay.
my request.
Ah, okay. So at your request, they all moved out of the scene. They all moved out of that area, right?
Correct.
Okay. But before you made that request, they were in that area, weren't they?
Yes.
And you only chose to photograph 2 footwear impressions that night, placard 2 and placard 3, right?
Yes.
Now, show you Exhibit 364.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Mr. McCauley showed you that photograph a few minutes ago, right?
That is correct.
Okay. And you told us that that was a photograph that you took in Aaron Hernandez's basement on June 18th, 2013, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you could have sent this photograph to Herb Hedges at Nike on June 20th of 2013, right?
Yes.
You didn't do that until after Trooper Benson spoke to you on the morning of November 20th, 2014, right?
Yes.
17 months later, right?
Yes.
So there was nothing new about this photograph, was there?
About the photograph itself, no.
Now, Mr. McCauley also showed you this photograph, Exhibit 230E, right?
Yes.
Okay. And this is a photograph that was taken inside a bedroom, a second floor bedroom closet at Mr. Hernandez's home, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And now, by the way, these shoe boxes up on the top shelf there, none of those are for Nike Retros, are they?
I don't believe so.
Okay. But they're all size 13, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you understood, did you not, that the reason that Trooper Benson brought you size 13 shoes to check out was because he wanted to link Aaron Hernandez to Placard 2, right?
I'm going to object, Your Honor.
As to his understanding, he may testify whether or not that was his understanding.
Was that your understanding, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Mr. McCauley showed you 237F. Recall he showed you this photograph, sir?
Yes.
And I think you testified that this photograph, 237F, you think is a little clearer than 237G, the one that I showed you on cross-examination?
I think it's a lot clearer.
A lot clearer, okay. Well, they're both photographs of the same impression, aren't they?
Certainly.
Okay. So let's talk about this one. In 237F, do you see the ruler there in the photograph?
I do.
Okay. And is the ruler still on top of the ground?
It is.
Now, you testified about the transparencies that you made for the size 11 and the size 12 shoes, right?
Yes.
Okay, and those are now in evidence. Now, and you recall you testified on redirect examination that those were provided to the defense, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, am I right that the last transparency you made earlier this week on March 16th, 3 days ago, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so since you made that transparency on Monday of this week, you've had it in your possession, haven't you?
Yes.
So it was never provided to the defense, was it, sir?
Not the size 11.
Not what?
Not the size 11 transparency.
So when you testified a few minutes ago on redirect examination that those transparencies were provided to the defense, that wasn't true, was it, sir?
The plural transparencies is incorrect. There was one transparency, you are correct. The size 11 was not provided. The size 12 was.
So with respect to the size 11 that you testified to about on redirect, that testimony wasn't true, correct?
I misspoke.
Now, this conversation that you had with Trooper Benson, that was on the morning of Thursday, November 20th, 2014, right?
Yes.
Okay. Who was present for that conversation?
I don't recall anyone else being there other than Trooper Benson and myself. It was within the office at the Lakeville Crime Lab. There may have been other people in the office, but they weren't present in the cubicle that we were sitting at.
Okay. So this was just the two of you, Trooper Eric Benson and Lieutenant Bennett, at the Lakeville Crime Lab on the morning of Thursday, November 20th, 2014, right?
That would be correct, yes.
Okay. And by the way, Trooper Benson, that's not his post, right?
No, he doesn't belong in, he's not assigned to the crime lab.
Okay. So he had a drive there that day to come meet with you, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you told us that you and Trooper Benson had a conversation, right?
Yes.
Okay. And during that conversation, he didn't just ask you to look at something, did he?
Could you rephrase that?
Sure, I'm happy to rephrase.
Don't.
One of the things he told you during that conversation was that he wanted you to look at something, right?
Yes.
Okay. And one of the things he told you during that conversation is that he wanted you to find somebody at Nike who could try to identify some shoes, right?
Oh, yes, that's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one of the things he asked you during that conversation was to reanalyze placard 2, right?
Yes.
Okay. But in addition to asking you some things, Trooper Benson also told you something during that meeting, didn't he, sir?
Yes.
Okay. And what he told you was what he believed regarding the placard 2 impression.
Yes.
Are you telling this jury, sir, that when Trooper Benson told you in that private meeting on the morning of November 20th, 2014, what he believed about that impression, that had no effect on you, sir?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have.
You may step down.